My name's Latasha Marshall, and I make bad choices.
Coming in?
I shouldn't.
Stay away from my husband.
You want everything up, Tash?
I didn't ask for any of this.
Maybe I already passed.
From the Roots Up, the Latasha Marshall Story by Brandon Dominique Ray. Book 1 of 4. Chapter 1, The Great Escape, Latasha Marshall. Damn it, I've done it again. The thoughts looped repeatedly in my head as I sat on the edge of the musty queen-size bed, staring into the dimly lit gloom of the room. I grabbed the unused portion of the thin, slightly stained sheet he was sleeping under. I wrapped myself as tightly as I could, as if I were a human burrito. I held my head in my hands and let out a long, heavy exhale, accepting the reality of the mess I had gotten myself into once again. The conditions of the room wouldn't allow me to submerge myself in denial. The small green lamp on a raggedy black table in the corner of the room reminded me that I was for the streets. I chuckled to myself when I spotted the travel-size Holy Bible next to the motel phone and the half-used pack of condoms that didn't belong to us. I couldn't help but wonder if anyone had ever actually bothered to crack open that Bible. Not that this was the type of place where worship happens. I glanced at the clock that hung over the bed, but the hands were so faded I couldn't make out the time. I was pretty sure it was between 2 and 3 in the morning because the sun hadn't come up yet. I mentally confirmed this assumption based on the constant loop of an annoying Rosetta Stone infomercial playing on the 24-inch TV mounted to the dingy, paper-thin motel wall. My mom had always told me that at this time of night, ain't nothing open but legs and ass. Shamefully, I had to admit I was guilty of both. My bare back was covered in chill bumps as the window AC unit blew icy air on full blast. I was sure I had hypothermia because the room felt like an icebox. It had to be at least 30 degrees, and I could literally feel the temperature continuing to drop. I reached for the blanket, trying to pull it gently without waking him up. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't slightly annoyed. After several failed attempts at being subtle, I yanked about 87 inches of blanket from up under him and used it as a shield. I couldn't believe this nigga was so inconsiderate that he left me to freeze to death under a fucking thin-ass motel sheet. He was wrapped in the blanket like it was his mother's fucking wound, while I laid there shivering for what felt like an eternity. I questioned why the fuck I didn't just leave after we fucked. The truth was, laying underneath the man made me feel less alone, important, and I wanted for that just for a little bit longer. I was fucking freezing, and I couldn't take it anymore. I had to do something. I decided I was going to break free from my blanket burrito oasis and make the long journey across the room to adjust the thermostat. I sat up slowly, then quickly rose to my feet. A gust of cold air hit my backside, and I immediately felt like I was standing on a slab of ice. My legs ached down to the bone, and with every step, I felt the cold cutting like a knife. I tried to move quickly, sprinting across the room, but my body would not cooperate. When I finally reached the air conditioner unit, I twisted the rusty knob, hoping to turn on the heat, but instead the damn thing just blew colder. I didn't have the patience to keep messing with it, so I just turned it off entirely. I darted back across the room, desperate for warmth, and threw myself back into my previous spot on the edge of the bed. Once again, I wrapped myself up like a human burrito and curled up against his warm body. For the first time in what felt like forever, I started to feel warm. He was sound asleep, drooling and snoring like a loud grizzly bear. The noise was almost unbearable, and I was starting to realize he was a lot less attractive than I previously thought. I started daydreaming about the moment he approached me in the parking lot of Sprouts Food Market. I was so damn intrigued. Fucking curiosity, that shit gets me every time. I must admit, though, I had a hard time resisting a man who eats organic and take care of his body. He was the big, muscular type, broad shoulders, packaged just how I like. He was smooth with his words, and everything about him was put together. I partially fell in love when I saw his print poking through those gray sweatpants. He was a walking thirst trap, and I was so damn thirsty. The moment I heard, "Hey, Miss Lady," I knew it was directed towards me. I had on a purple maxi dress, matching sandals, and a Michael Kors purse. I caught his eye without even trying. And let's just say my shapewear understood the assignment. My titties were practically sitting underneath my chin, thanks to Lane Bryant for making the impossible a possibility. I walked past him, making sure to poke my ass out just a little and sway my hips. I stopped dead in my tracks, pretending as if I didn't know he was talking to me. I turned around slowly and seductively. "Are you talking to me?" I continued to play coy with a puzzled look on my face. His facial expression said it all. He knew I was running game, yet he humored me anyway. He walked up to me, his pearly white teeth on full blast, muscles on display tucked under a tight wife beater. I had to quickly remind myself of my major rules I live by. Never chase after a man, I thought. It was at the top of my list, so I decided to play it cool and allow him to try his best to impress me. It didn't take long for him to realize I wasn't easily swayed. He upped the ante with a stream of compliments. "You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Your energy is amazing." And on and on and on. I'll admit it made me blush, but let's be real, I hear this type of shit every week. The truth is, he didn't even need to work that hard to impress me. I had already decided to sleep with him. He had a few things to offer, though. Interesting conversation, and he was funny as hell. That's one thing about me. I love a man that can make me laugh. We stood in that parking lot talking for what felt like hours. I didn't want him to think I was easy, so I made him put a little extra effort. I was surprised at how much we had in common, though, and I didn't expect us to connect on the level that we did. I was honestly shocked that our paths hadn't crossed before now. During our conversation, we found out that we worked just a few blocks apart from one another. On most days, I prefer not to drive, so I usually walk or take public transportation. My homegirls joke about it, but I always tell them it gives me that Sex in the City or Boss Lady in the City's vibe. And honestly, I love that feeling. There's something about public transit that just works for me. I was impressed when he said that he also prefers to take the bus or walk. I felt myself getting caught up and swept away by his charm. The self-sabotage within me wouldn't allow me to be great, though. Of course, that bitch that dwells deep inside of me reared her ugly head. Instantly, I looked up at him and I said, "What's wrong with you? You ain't got no car? You got a record, huh?" His facial expression changed, and I could tell that he was taken aback. He laughed, completely dismissing the majority of my questions, only answering the one. "Yeah, I got a car. Like I said, I just prefer to walk or take public transit." Self-sabotage had been activated, and there was no turning it off. It was in my nature to automatically label men. One thing that sent fire up my ass was a sexy lying-ass broke nigga, and I had decided he was all of the above. He was sexy as hell, but broke, lying, sexy niggas were off limits. I started walking away, and to my surprise, he followed me as if I wasn't done with the conversation. I increased my speed and he began walking faster to catch up with me. I aggressively yelled, "What do you want?" He walked up to me so close that I could smell the Colgate on his breath. He gently kissed my forehead, completely disarming me. He whispered in my ear, "Stop playing." "You don't want me? You finna stop playing, right?" I immediately replied, "Yes." I patiently waited for him to give me the details I so eagerly desired. Sadly, I have become very familiar with how this sort of thing goes. He finally told me to meet him at Motel Essex in an hour, and I almost burst from excitement. I maintained my composure and agreed to meet him as he had suggested. We both knew exactly what this was, and there was no need to delay it any longer. I gladly agreed to the casual encounter shit. It had been a few months since my cootie cat had any meaningful attention. I was primed and ready. Oh boy was giving big dick energy, and I was excited. I got into my truck and watched as he walked away. I purposefully waited so I could see if he was finna walk to the spot. To my surprise, he hopped in a Tesla and sped out of the parking lot like a fucking NASCAR driver. I typed Motel Essex in my GPS and pulled out of the parking lot moments after him. While driving, I received a text message from one of my best friends, Portia. I had completely forgotten that I was supposed to be meeting her for dinner. I knew she would be in her feelings about me canceling, especially if she knew why. So I made the decision to lie and tell her I got held up at work. Portia is very judgmental and overbearing, which is why I made a mental note to never disclose any details relating tonight. My GPS said I was 20 minutes out and my cootie cat was wet as hell. As I drove, I briefly wondered why he had suggested meeting at a motel so far from the city. I mean, why not just take me to the Hilton? It was literally a block away from Sprouts. I wasn't about to invite him back to my place, especially since I didn't know him. But suddenly doubts started creeping in again. I began thinking, what if he was lying about everything? What if he lives with his mama? What if I'm about to get sex trafficked? I was about to risk it all, and the dick had better be worth it. Whatever the case, it didn't matter because I had arrived at Motel Essex and I was flabbergasted that he would have me come to such a place. This motel was a complete dump. And I was very confused. I sat in my truck contemplating if I should lock my doors or just drive off. I put my foot on the brakes and shifted my gear into reverse when I spotted him walking into the building. I thought to myself, fuck it. I promised myself that if anything else felt weird, I'd hop in my truck and I would leave. I cautiously walked up to him and asked, "You come here often or something?" He quickly said, no. Based on how comfortable he seemed, though, in this environment, I could tell that was a complete lie. I waited patiently as he spoke to the front desk clerk, who was clearly addicted to drugs and reeked of alcohol. I watched anxiously as the clerk removed a white plastic key from the hook on the wall and handed it to him. He motioned with a head nod for me to follow him, and so I did. We stopped in front of room 114, and as soon as he opened the door, we were all over each other. The passion was intense. I couldn't help but say, the hell with caution. He knew exactly how to take charge. He picked me up and tossed me on the bed. He climbed on top of me and began kissing my neck. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I smiled to myself as I exhaled. I lay back on the bed and once again inhaled. This time smelling the familiar scent of gain, which relieved my anxiety because I wasn't sure these linens had been washed. I wasn't fully convinced that this place was bed bug free, but I was able to relax just a bit and enjoy the moment. He stood up like a yeti, exiting the swamp, towering over me. He took off his wife's beater and placed it on the floor. He then slowly pulled down his gray sweatpants, revealing the prettiest brown penis I had ever seen. He was acting very performative, like a porn star, which was very suspect. However, I dismissed it and allowed him to do his thing. I stared at his penis in amazement, admiring what God had created. Subsequently, my ADHD kicked in, and for a moment, I got sidetracked. I found myself trying to figure out why this nigga didn't have on drawers, I thought to myself. What kind of grown man walks around free balling? It didn't take long for him to regain my attention, though. He pulled my legs to the edge of the bed and used his hands to climb up my thighs. He spread my legs and wasted no time licking and kissing like I was an entire meal. I lay back and enjoyed him munching on my feast. I placed my hands on each side of his head and guided him in a circular motion. I closed my eyes and allowed the energy to manifest. I was about to climax when I heard him say, "Hold it. You come when daddy tell you to come." Truthfully, him saying that was sexy as hell, but nigga, I couldn't hold it. I tried hard not to fuck up the mood. So of course I said, "Yes, daddy, I'ma hold it." 5 seconds later, my lady parts erupted. He looked at me with such disappointment, prompting me to sit up and kiss him on the mouth. I couldn't believe myself. I never kissed these niggas in the mouth. It was something about the way he looked at me. I just wanted to make him happy again. He dismissed my effort and was not impressed at all. I realized then that I would have to pull out all the stops. I placed my hand on his chest and pushed him down on the bed. I climbed on top of him and kept climbing until my lady parts were aligned perfectly with his mouth. He slowly inserted his tongue deep inside of me in search of my G-spot. I tightened my hips around his face and planted my nails into his chest as I allowed the intense feeling to take over my body. I collapsed on the bed and laid there motionless as the electricity continued to pulsate through my body. He turned me over and manually arched my back, and I mentally prepared myself to receive all of his glory. He then did something I would have never expected. This nigga started eating my butt. And as much as I wanted to hate it, I succumbed to the pleasure. He finally penetrated me, and boy, it was worth the wait. Before I knew it, I was climaxing over and over and over again at his command, of course. We spent hours together, creating moments that felt almost magical. In between sessions, we laid in bed just talking and laughing and smoking weed, almost as if we were a real couple. We shared stories with me about his job as a top executive of all things plant-based, one of the largest vegan fast food chains on the East Coast. He even asked me about my work at We Run the World Realty, and he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. I had never experienced this before. The conversation flowed very naturally. We even made an unexpected connection. The headquarters for his company was a commercial property owned by my firm. We quickly realized that we'd actually met years ago during a business deal. I'd been a top realtor at my firm for 6 years when my employer secured a commercial property leased to all things plant-based. We both vaguely recalled working on that deal together. This realization made me question even more why he had chosen to hide me in this roach motel. This nigga made bank. I had planned on asking him that very question when we stumbled upon an open bottle of liquor in the mini fridge. Though it was a bit sketchy, we decided to drink it anyway. The night was unfolding in a way I hadn't expected, and I found myself letting go, enjoying the moment more than I had planned. For a moment, I honestly entertained and thought that someone like him could truly be interested in someone like me. I quickly pushed that thought aside, forcing myself to stay in the moment, not to overthink, and simply enjoy the night. We went one more final round before he turned onto his side and fell straight to sleep. I couldn't help but feel a little upset that he didn't cuddle with me, but it was a harsh reminder that this was just sex. I laid there for what felt like forever, allowing my thoughts to scold me from the poor decisions, regret, embarrassment, and shame. It all became overwhelming. I hated the fact that I couldn't stop my mind from racing. The truth was, I had just engaged in incredible sex with a complete stranger again. The only thing I knew about this man was that his name was Jason. At least that's what he claimed. The only thing that I could say for certain was that he knew all the right things to say. He knew how to make me feel seen and wanted. That was enough for me in that moment. And I would be lying if I said it wouldn't be the last time. The truth is, this was the 5th one-night stand this year, and it was only May. Most of my life, I had been labeled fast or easy, and my favorite personal one was broken, damaged goods. I don't know why I did the shit that I do, or why I keep making choices that leaves me feeling empty afterwards. It was a pattern, I guess. I used to tell myself that my fucked up relationship with my father was the reason for all my poor choices, but over time, I've convinced myself that I no longer cared. I used to think my father's drug use or the fact that he abandoned me was contributing factors of my reckless behavior. However, over the years, I've realized it has less to do with him and his mishaps and more to do with the fact that it's just who I am. I like fucking and being fucked up. I'd be lying if I said Jason wasn't the best fuck I had ever had, but the reality of what went down in room 114 was starting to suffocate me. I literally hated the aftermath of a one-night stand. I always felt so dirty and cheap. It didn't help that this was the cheapest motel I had ever stepped foot in. Something about Jason just did not sit well with me. However, I'm good at ignoring red flags, warning signs, and especially gut feelings. My hormones had finally leveled out and my body was no longer buzzing with desire anymore. All I could smell was the mix of sex and black and mild smoke, and it was starting to get under my skin. All I wanted in that moment was to go home, shower, and scrub off this slutty feeling. I didn't want to risk waking him up. I preferred never to speak to him again. One-night stands are better when there's a clean break and no after-sex conversation. From the edge of the bed, I mapped out the great escape. I took a quick mental inventory and visually confirmed the location of all my items. I quickly emerged from my warm, safe haven, grabbed my shoes from under the bed, and tossed my dress over my head. Shoes in one hand, thong in the other, I crept around the room like a fucking burglar, quietly searching for my purse. When I finally spotted it on the floor near the door, I felt a surge of relief. I quietly made my way to the door, unlocking it as gently as I could and turning the knob. Just as I was about to succeed in the great escape, my phone began to ring. Wonk, 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 wonk. I instantly regretted choosing this stupid ringtone. I damn near threw my purse and my phone out the door in a panic. I quickly opened the burgundy motel door and closed it as softly as I could, tiptoeing down the hall, barely clothed. I heard a loud noise behind me, causing me to stand completely frozen in place as if I had been caught in the act. It took me a moment to realize the noise was the person in room 113 coming outside to smoke. I quickly made my way to my truck, and once there, I swung the driver's door open and climbed into the seat. I found refuge inside and let out a deep sigh of relief. I started my truck, and just as I was about to pull off, my phone started ringing again. Wonk, 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 wonk. I declined the call because I didn't recognize the number. My phone began ringing again. Wonk, 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 wonk. This time I answered, hello? I immediately heard on the other end, "Bitch, what's tea?" This is the portion of the book where you can pause and reflect. Pause and reflect. Before we move on, let's take a moment to pause and reflect. Latasha's story is meant to make you think about your own patterns and choices. Time to do a little shadow work. Let's explore what's going on beneath the surface. Tea time, self-love, self-worth, self-esteem. Reflection questions about Latasha. Take your time with each answer. Each response should be at least 2 sentences long. Be as descriptive and reflective as possible. If you were Latasha's friend and she shared everything about her night with Jason with you, what would your honest opinion be about her choices and the situation as a whole? Question 2. Latasha has asked for your advice. What would you tell her? What advice would you give? Be honest and be specific. Understanding key concepts. Self-worth. This is your sense of value. It affects and influences your decisions and behaviors. Low self-esteem leads to patterns of unhealthy relationships, people-pleasing, and prioritizing others over your own needs. Self-love. Self-love shapes how you see yourself in the world. It determines how you think, feel, and act. It means respecting yourself, prioritizing your well-being, setting healthy boundaries, and making choices that does not dishonor your value. Self-discovery. It's understanding your true self, the things that you value, strengths, desires, and areas of growth. This will allow you to live life authentically, as well as make choices that are aligned with your true self. Reflection prompt. Use this page to compare your own understanding of self-love, self-worth, self-discovery to the definitions that were provided. How are they similar? How are they different? Personal reflection. Question 1. Do you think Latasha struggles with a lack of self-worth or self-love? Why? Why not? Question 2. What advice or strategies would you suggest for Latasha to improve her self-worth and self-love? How could these help her make healthier choices? Question 3. Think about your own life. Have you ever acted in a way you later regretted? What emotions or patterns were driving those choices? Question 4. Are there habits, decisions, or patterns in your life that are influenced by low self-esteem or lack of self-love? How have they affected your choices? Question 5. Based on the guidance, advice you gave Latasha previously, how could you apply that same advice to your own life? Question 6. While answering these questions, did you discover anything new about yourself, your beliefs, or your behavior patterns? Tea time conclusion. Self-awareness is just the first step. The real work happens when you take action by reflecting, practicing self-love, and actively strengthening your self-worth. You move closer to becoming the person you truly want to be. Small, consistent steps lead to meaningful growth. This is the conclusion of Chapter 1 and the tea time activities. I'll see you for Chapter 2.